I'm going to take you on a journey through the mystical lands of Ireland and through Britain and through like northern Britain. Pretty much all of UK. We're just going to go through the UK right now. So Turn and I and a number of other YouTubers got a chance to experience the Total War Britannia kind of pre-release, early access kind of foray into what the game's going to be like. And you can see from the slide here, we're going to have 10 playable factions across 5 cultures. We'll go into those 5 cultures later. But they're going to be redesigning and improving a lot of the mechanics that we've already seen in Attila. And Attila is going to be the base game for this. Obviously, this isn't going to be based anyway off of Total War Warhammer. But this is kind of in the aftermath of the Great Viking Invasion. And what you're going to be seeing here, guys, are a lot of the slides that they used in the presentation. They were really cool slides, so I apologize for the video quality of them being a little wonky here. But it is coming out on April 19th, 2018, so we're, what, like 2.5 months away from this bad boy. But we're going to be seeing some new technology coming out, a lot of cool things with that, and how that technology works we'll get into later. We're going to see some very awesome character progression in the vein of a lot of RPGs that we see nowadays, with a lot of stuff going on with those. And I'm really excited how they did that, because I never played Attila, so maybe this is something that's completely normal for that, but it might be also completely new, depending on what you all think of that. But that's my opinion of it. Let's get on to this next slide here. So this, of course, takes place during the Viking invasion of Britain, and we've talked about this a little bit. This is the game starts off right when Danislaw has really kicked in throughout the entirety of the UK. So you can see from this timeline, 865 all the way up to 874 AD. So if you're watching shows like The Lost Kingdom, boom, this is going to take place during all this. This is the Alfred the Great is now the chief ruler of Wessex, Wessex or whatever it's called actually. And then if you're watching Vikings, this all leads up to where this point in the game is. So very exciting time in pop culture right now, or whatever it is that is considered. But there are a number of other mechanics that they are adding to the game that we're going to be going over here. You're going to see these snippets of gameplay that they gave us, and this is not unlike any other YouTuber. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do anything direct on our own and record it. They said, hey, we won't do that. So what we're going to see here is that we're going to be playing as mid. That's what we played at CA's headquarters. This is in Ireland here. So a lot of the really cool things that are going to be going on are basically affixed to getting certain regions. So you can actually unify all of Ireland, become the High King of Ireland. That's part of the objectives section that we'll get into later. But also, you can become the unifier of all of England. So you've got a lot of really cool objectives that play into how those each one of these regions plays, because like I was saying, you do have these 5 cultures that you can go through. But get on to the next slide here. So this is what the game map actually looks like, as far as taking a look of at Mid, or M-I-D-E. So maybe it's Mid, maybe it's Mead. I'm not really sure I pronounce that. And I think every YouTuber is going to be struggling and saying, like, how am I going to pronounce Loch Gabhair or Cluain Iriaid? I don't know. I don't have the accent. I suck at most of this stuff anyway when it comes to pronouncing things. You guys know this. But the campaign map itself is borrowing a lot of the stuff that we already see from Attila. Personally, when I was playing with it, I actually struggled with trying to find out where the hell things were. It was hard for me to tell what part of the map was my region, and what part of the map was my enemy's region. And from that point, where do I get to attack? How do I attack? What am I doing? What is life? But we'll get into how the actual settlements are done too, because the settlements are on a whole different basis now this time. And I really like it, because I'm so used to playing things with Total War Warhammer now, that it's a little bit different and a little bit easier at the same time. I guess you could say streamlined. Definitely some UI improvements. But let's go into recruitment. So recruitment itself is done through research. We'll touch on research in a bit. It just kind of has a lot going for it, and I want the actual gameplay portion to exemplify it. But units are going to start out at 25% strength, so you're not going to be able to recruit an army like that. You're going to have to really be strategic, almost like XCOM. You know, XCOM, you don't want to lose any guys. It'll be a little bit of the same here with Britannia, because you're not going to be having these huge thunder stacks rolling around. Troops are going to cost food, money, supply, and supplies are going to come from your friendly cities. So you're looking at a slower building army with more of an elite core, and that's what we saw. You can see these little tiles here, and when we jump into the little gameplay portion of it, I'll explain a little bit more. It's not a huge segment. That's coming up right now. So you see, oh, that's 3 swordsmen. Well, those are 3 varying levels of swordsmen as far as like hierarchy. So, okay, maybe this one's more elite, this one's less elite, stuff like that. But we're going to get these cool events and dilemmas, and these events and dilemmas are supposed to be catered to what's going on at the time. You know, if you're playing Ireland, you're trying to unify, certain events are going to happen to you as the oncoming High King of Ireland. So it's really cool. It's very thematic. This is very campaign driven. So a lot of what they're doing here, they want this to have a lot of drive to create your own history for the unification of the UK. And it's really cool because they have, I think, pulled that off really well, because a lot of the way events happen, let's wait a little bit here and you'll see another picture of that. But these events, you get these really cool pictures here right now. And these pictures are very indicative of the art style of the time. You know, monks using these bas reliefs, these sculptures in very thin plated metal and gold. So you've got this beautiful dilemma piece that comes up, and this isn't animated obviously, but you'll see through some of the gameplay that these are actually animated little pieces here, and they showed us everything using these animated vignettes, and I thought it was a really awesome art direction because it fits in exactly to the way things are done. Even if you look at the collector's edition that was announced, the collector's edition is going to come in a sort of gilded, really cool looking box. It's kind of looks more than a box. So we've got a lot coming with this, but you can see here that this, you know, we should stabilize and trailing before we look beyond our borders. Prove your right to rule and eliminate nearby rebels. That's the very first thing that we've dealt with, you know, is taking out some rebels. And these events, as we kind of see here, are going to really color a lot of what we deal with in the game. And the character progression for it gives you a lot to kind of play into that. You know, how do I want my region to act? How do I want the dilemmas to play out? How do I want the character itself to progress in the game as well? And then the technologies, as you can see here, they're not just simply, oh, choose this and it unlocks the next step. It's a little more like, choose this and recruit 10 horses, or not horses, not sentient horses. You can see here, this is just a little bit of the campaign as a whole here. There's nothing specific to what I'm saying, but I just want you guys to see more goodies. But like the technology is going to be along the lines of, okay, if I choose to recruit 10 cavalry, then I'm going to have access to another research slot for cavalry. So your research is going to be dictated on your play style. You're not going to be able to just say, oh, let's just blanket research everything. You have to build the armies, build the buildings, play like that. And with that, we're going to get the family trees are going to come back into the game as well. So these family trees are going to give us a lot of way to keep an eye on loyalty, like they were saying, but also you can use these family trees to deal with governors and the such, and we'll get into those a bit too. But you can marry into other families. I mean, those of you that have played any Paradox game, you know how important a family tree is. Well, the family tree is going to be used here to manage a lot of the marriages that you're going to be doing. You can marry into an opposing faction to kind of help solidify that faction. You have a lot of options there. So that's the cool thing is, oh, you're at war. Well, you want to declare peace. Well, let me marry to your daughter, and then that'll kind of solidify the peace between our two factions here. And I think that's I mean, I've always really dug that level of complexity in a game, so I'm all for it. Some people, not so much. But you can see even from this little picture here, this is the actual character screen for some of the guys, and you can see the natural progression. So for Zeal itself, or I'm sorry, for command, it increases the actual bodyguard size of the unit. It enables night battles, certain things. As you progress through each one of these, and we'll get a little bit more into character progression right now, actually, you'll get more abilities. So maybe you want just strictly a governor, so the governance actually gives him direct abilities that are there. Or if you want zeal, his aura is bigger, he gets more actual public order. You know, there's more things that are included with that. And then you've got these followers, and the followers are what I was talking about here. They're the things that are really going to give you this very RPG-esque feel. You choose them almost like you would choose talents in, like, say, World of Warcraft. And each one of them, like, for instance, the Forager helps with food production. The Champion helps with melee combat. The Quartermaster, I think, was the one that helps you with replenishing your troops. The Priest helps with production of what's just called Church. It's probably going to be like Faith or something like that in some way or another. So you've got a lot of ways you can build your characters rather than just a simple 3 branches. Oh, okay, it's going to be this, that, or this. So as we're talking about the character development, you've got your traits, you've got your followers. One big thing that they've done here is there are no agents in Thrones of Britannia. None at all. You know, they said that we have said as a community, agents are kind of an issue. You know, it's no fun dealing with a level 14 Tomb King or Tomb Prince who just goes through and kills all your agents whenever they want because they're not leveled up. Never happened to me. Swear to God, it's not in my current playthrough. But they've taken the agents' functions, and like I said, they've rolled them into the generals and governors through the followers that we get access to. So you can build out characters that are a little bit better. You know, you see your Quartermaster's got your range, you got your Pillager who's going to be you're better at raiding and all the such, or your Forager, like I was saying, food production. So you can build your general how you want, and each character has these 5 traits to begin with. The things you see in the center column that say Arbiter, Handsome, Assertive, Defender, and Renowned. It's like they knew it was me. But you get more traits that grow over time. So these traits in and of themselves will also grow over time as you play into what they actually do in and of themselves. So, you know, you can get Defender if you're in combat a little bit more. Defender can rank up itself a little bit. So you've got all these ways to really kind of bolster what you're dealing with your characters. And you can see also you've got your wife and her natural traits as well, like natural beauty, and what that affects to your character. Like, oh, it gives me more zeal. It helps with my influence. And influence is another thing. Here's an example of what the dilemma looks like. See how that was animated? Pretty cool, right? But influence is another thing because, okay, your guy's got more influence. He's got more influence in the court. If he gets pissed off, if he gets more disloyal, then that's going to have more influence on your faction, because you can actually have family members getting more and more and more disloyal. And as you can see here, just more of the technology tree. We'll go into how disloyalty works when soon we get to governance, which is coming up. But this is just kind of an overall playthrough idea of how just the character in general works. But one kind of interesting thing I wanted to jump into here, guys, look, this is like a sneaked screenshot. I took a picture of from a phone. So whenever you get into combat, just like you get in combat normally, and this plays into how character progression works. This is just a non sequitur. You have this screen that comes up. You know, where are we looking as far as the ability of this battle? Are we going to lose it? Are we going to win it? So on and so forth. So as you can see here, your generals and admirals always try to predict the outcome of the battle as best they can. But if they lack experience, the displayed values might be inaccurate. The accuracy of the prediction is based on your leader's experience level compared to the opposing leaders. So that leads me to believe that even if you have a less competent army or an army that's less in size, you can still win a fight because your leader is so vastly superior to the opposing leader. So very interested to see how that works. But let's get into the governor states, as I was talking about. The way that the actual settlements work is you've got one major settlement. We'll go into more of that in a second here. And that major settlement then can have a governor, and the governor brings bonuses to the province and makes them better governors over time. So, like we were saying, you know, you can see governance was an actual ability. Okay, their influence is not very high or very low. this is someone that you want to rise up in the family, you can make them a governor. Now, making them a governor, they become an actual playable character that you can progress through the character progression system. If you choose to pass them up for governance, then they might get pissed off and eventually leave the family, get involved in some sort of rebellion against you. So you have to pick your governor states, or the governors of your states, a little bit strategically, I guess you could say. So you have to kind of have like at least an idea of what you're doing here. You can see here, this is just a campaign kind of playing itself out. Nothing crazy or special here, just kind of gameplay going on. But what I want to talk about now is the settlements, the provinces. So they're made up of larger capitals and smaller satellite settlements. I don't like to read directly off of a PowerPoint because that's not the way PowerPoints are made. But with this, you've got these one major settlement. It's got your walls, it's got your garrison, very reminiscent of what we see already in almost every other Total War. Now, the minor settlements, you can see from this picture on the left, if you look down at the center portion of it, you can see like the two like building portions. Well, the right one is all of your minor settlements. The left one is just the capital. So basically, you have a way to manage everything from one screen, and none of those minor settlements have walls or garrisons, so you kind of have to sortie out to protect them. So it makes defending your land a lot more difficult because your land's actually quite vast compared to where your capital is, and it makes getting into diplomacy warfare a little bit tricky. You have to kind of pick and choose who you fight with. So the diplomacy section is actually really awesome. This first point is huge, so I'm just going to read it verbatim. Trade agreements are automatic if you're not at war and can establish a trade route. Boom! You don't have to go through that whole initial stage here. So the actual portion of it, of the diplomacy, depends on your actual culture. You know, if you're Gaelic, then it's easier for you to ally with other Gaelic regions, or actually it's even easier to ally with British regions, but maybe a little more trouble with Scandinavians. So you have got all of these kind of attractors and detractors when it comes to the diplomacy section on more of a cultural basis now, that has a pretty heavy weigh-in on things, as it did with most historical games that have a cultural basis to them. But this kind of gives you guys an idea of how the just how the screen looks when it comes to diplomacy. Very standard run-of-the-mill as we've come to expect. But again, you're not going to want to just jump hog wild into all this, because how your provinces are set up, and as you can see from that picture, determines how you're going to be able to defend them. And that really kind of gets us into war fervor here. And this is back as well from Attila. And I never played Attila, like I was saying, guys, so this might actually be completely... Oh yeah, Italian Spartacus, you idiot. Of course it's like that. But this is pretty interesting. So it makes it so you can't just kind of go on a war rampage and go from faction to faction to faction to faction to faction. Because if there's too much war, it's bad, and it causes a lot of public order. But if there's just enough war, people really kind of, oh yeah, digging this, we're expanding our borders. So you do have to kind of weigh in what you want out of every single conflict you get, and you can't just go hog wild jumping into it here. Kind of, it dictates, like we said here, your faction's kind of appetite for war. But we're about to get into one of our last points here, and this is just kind of some more gameplay of the actual map. And I'm kind of looking at my notes here, looking to see if there's anything I've missed out on. We're going to go over some of the questions that the other YouTubers and myself asked, but I'm pretty much taking you guys through the same exact journey that they brought us through, and looking at these slides and talking about what we got to hear about from the game. I mean, we got to play the game for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. I think Turin and I spent the most time like together because his hand started hurting, so like we were just like all like jump onto my screen and like talk about this and that and this and this and this. So it was really cool because like Indie Pride was right there from Milk and Cookies Total War. I think it was right next to Party Elite as well. So it was awesome to kind of get a chance to sit amongst all of these YouTubers who I've never met. I've only just like collaborated and talked to them online for what, a whole year now. So it was cool. Cool thing about the production of the buildings I just went into real quick there. If you right click on any of that, you rather than seeing this whole build tree, you see that slot's capability. So you can see, oh, okay, it can be a church, it can be an abbey, or it can be like a monk, whatever. So you've got these things that they can actually progress into, and it's easy to actually see what those are. But the objectives are basically region specific. So like I was saying, you can become the High King of Ireland and reunite all of Ireland and make it actually Ireland. You've got these kingdom victories that enable your kingdom to evolve. Like that I'm saying here, Mead will eventually, or ultimately become Ireland, for example. So all of them have what's called like a total end game goal, the ultimate victory. And this is different for every single faction. We weren't given any kind of indication of what this might look like, but you need to do this to trigger the actual end game. And it's going to be a challenge that is very specific to your region and to your culture. So I'm very excited to see what that kind of flavor is from those kind of end game goodies here. But this is more examples of the technology I wanted to kind of close out on before we get into just some shots of the warfare and just some kind of key art shots as I go into some questions here. But again, so you see here, you've got to do almost every single piece of the technology tree requires some sort of prerequisite, you know. Recruit 10 cavalry units to unlock this one. Let's see what this one is. Build or upgrade a granary. Like, you have to do certain things if you want to get your technology to certain points. And I think it's actually a really interesting way of going about technology, because I know, for example, in Total War Warhammer, or even in like Rome, there's throwaway technologies that I just don't like or need. I'm like, oh, this just gets me to here, just do it. And I'm sure that's going to be the case here, but at least now I know what I'm researching is actually put towards the way I'm building out my entire army, so or my entire playthrough. So I'm okay with that. So let's go into some of these questions here as I break my notepad. So some people are asking, like, these faction mechanics, how are they going to be worked, or how is each faction going to feel different? That's when I kind of got into a little bit more, but every faction is going to be relatively historical in its sense, of course, right? So all of these are historically accurate to their locations and everything like that, and they're going to have unique units that play into that, you know, like the Vikings Huskarls, stuff like that. And everything's going to have cultural bonuses affixed to that as well. And these dilemmas and these events, like I was talking about, they are going to be specific and unique to each faction, and they will actually branch off. So it's almost like a choose your own adventure. So if you choose, because these dilemmas and events do give you multiple options to deal with an issue. Like one thing was, okay, a certain person, or when we were playing Mead, was I think it was like Dryf, D-R-Y-F, or basically the precursor to Dublin. They got into a conflict, and we could either choose to ignore it, side with them, side with their enemy. And it would have ramifications across the entire map as far as how it would affect diplomacy, how would it affect then your trade routes, and then how it would affect your economy, because one or the other is going to bolster some and negate the others. So it's very interesting that these dilemma, and you can't just choose to, because even choosing no, I choose not to, I abstain, will still have an effect because other factions will think negatively of you. So these dilemmas and these events kind of really shape and create a narrative for you, which is very, very cool. I think it was Alex the Rambler who had asked, will Wessex have access to its burrs? You know, in history, Alfred the Great, the way he really beat back the Saxons was by uniting 4 or 5 towns into what are called burrs. Basically, it's like a standing professional army that's always there, rather than having to, oh God, they're in our land. Rally the bannermen! We must go as a sortie and destroy them. Like, no, this was a standing army that was always kind of around the general region of each one of these towns, these 4 to 5 towns that they kind of unified under. But they weren't able to go into a ton about those just yet. They said that, hey, we will probably know more about that later, but maybe like a public order bonus, something like that. One question was asked, I think it was Party Lead who asked, hey, we have noticed that the AI is very aggressive. How is that going to play into the game? Well, the AI is going to be way more aggressive towards minor settlements, because minor settlements can be, there's no walls, there's no garrison, you have to go out and meet anyone that attacks you. So you're going to have an AI that's going to go after those minor settlements and sack them, because if they can take the food, then they get that food to help replenish while within your territory. Because if they're in your territory, then their supplies can get cut off, and if the supplies get cut off, they start taking attrition damage. So they're going to be attacking those minor settlements to keep themselves from taking attrition, if that is the case. But it also gives them food, like I was saying, not food, not supplies, money. There we go. That's the other thing. but all sorts of stuff that kind of helps them out in their aggression towards your ultimate capital. One question I had asked is, hey, how does the unit diversity going to kick in here? I mean, you've got 10 factions, and even unit diversity at the time was very kind of light. You never had crazy difference like cataphract horsemen like you do with an eastern portion of the Rome Total War map, or legionnaires like you would on Rome, or, you know, swordmasters of Hoeth. You don't have that kind of unit diversity in this era, in this very microscoped portion of this era, this whole Viking age. And what they were telling us, well, each culture has a specific, I guess you could say, focus. So you've got, you know, Welsh, Scottish, Irish / Gaelic, English, and Viking cultures. That's our 5 cultures. The Irish or the Gaelic cultures are really good with the swords. English have the proto-longbowmen, so they're your range kind of faction. Viking are going to have access to, you know, the Huskarls with their axes, Berserkers with their axes, axe infantry as a whole. So definitely a lot more axes in the Viking region. Welsh are going to have access to more cavalry. So each one of these has got its own flavor that is going to be, it's going to dictate how that army is going to be built and what kind of units you're going to be able to pull the more elite units from. It's not to say that English is not going to have foot soldiers and swordsmen and axemen. Of course it will, but it will have access to more ranged or more benefits for ranged. So you've got that. Is there any planned DLC for the saga? I think that was something we all asked as a whole. And they pretty much just said, hey, we're focusing on getting it finished right now, guys. We'll worry about the DLC and FLC once we've done. And a totally fair point, I'd say. One question was asked, can we expect any kind of outside forces invading in that are not on the map? Like the Norman invasion of Ireland, Norman invasion of Britain, because I mean, well, we all know that's where this game kind of culminates. But they were saying that there are certain dilemmas that deal with historical interactions of other factions. They are going to come in from the other points of the map and stuff like that. And you'll get a dilemma that even says, or an event that says, even if you're not a part of it, hey, these guys are in this region, be wary, or go pursue them. You know, just kind of a heads up kind of thing. Just like when in Total War, the Golden Horde is on the move, like stuff like that. So it's a way to kind of let you know that what's going on in the game without you having been directly involved in that portion of the game. But our last question here was siege battles. How are they going to play out? Guys, I'm excited to tell you that the siege battles have been very updated. They're pretty intense. They kind of feel like a cross between the current Attila ones and a little bit of like Shogun, but there's also every single settlement is unique. There's no siege battle that's going to be the same cookie cutter siege battle. Every single one is unique, they were saying. So I'm very excited to see how that siege battle, that siege conflict kind of plays out. But that kind of covers everything here, guys. I just spoke for damn near half hour straight. Whew. I was really excited to share this video with you. I'm sorry I'm a little late uploading it. I had some internet problems last night, so I'm a little behind the curve, so you can hopefully you can forgive me for that. But I was really stoked to be there. A huge shout out and thank you to Creative Assembly for inviting myself and the other YouTubers. A huge shout out to all the other YouTubers that joined in with us. It was really great to meet all of them. Like that I was like floored. I was like, this is the coolest experience of my life. Well, maybe not the coolest, but pretty damn up there. It was just really awesome to see how that process works, getting a chance to ask a lot of the questions to the people that work on the game and have a passion for the game. Like, it's amazing. Like, we talk so much about, like, hey, it's an easy fix to do this and this. Well, as they were explaining to us, like, yeah, it might be an easy fix to do that, but it's the 50 other factors that affects that create the actual issue. Stuff like Norska and what that actually affects are just kind of, we can just mod them into the game. Like, well, it actually causes these series of issues. So there was a lot of cool explanations for a lot of the stuff that they do in the game, or why they can't just make these additions and that addition. But it's also really cool to kind of pick their brain on Warhammer. I mean, they're from the UK, so Warhammer is way more prevalent in the UK than it is in America. And even though it's starting to come up more and more, I'd say it's very big. It's like it went from being, oh, no one plays the hell out of that game, it's niche, to, oh, it's like an underground pop culture thing. I can't wait for like 2 years from now, everyone's like, you don't play Warhammer? I play Warhammer in the club, guy. But it was cool to pick their brains on that and kind of like hear their passion for, oh yeah, I play like Dogbert was telling us that he plays, he used to play Blood Angels, and I play Blood Angels, so we were just like kind of nerding out about that. He also likes Blue Moon. You should give him shit about that. But that kind of concludes everything for here today, guys. If you have any other questions, please let me know. I kind of just like shot through all this because I wanted to get out all the information I had in my brain. But if you have any specific questions, I'm sure it'll jar something loose and I can answer it for you. But thanks so much for watching today, guys. If you like the video and you like this kind of content, this kind of early access announcement content, go ahead and let me know in the comment section, or go ahead and like it. That always is a huge boon to us. But thanks again for watching, guys. Have a good one and take care.